Tonight, editorial has finally figured out what makes a good Legion of Superheroes issue. Not focusing on the Legion at all. Wonder Woman gets knocked out by her most dangerous foe yet, a born-again Christian woman, and the Justice League of America is actually happy to be on Telos, because otherwise they'd have to go back to Detroit. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 190 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host and we are in week 3 of Convergence month. I don't know whether I say that with excitement or dread. Mostly dread. Honestly, it hasn't gotten awful yet. I think I'm still in a little bit of denial. Next week we do have a couple of books that are going to ever so slightly remind us that the larger multiverse exists, but I'm still holding on to hope that it won't be terrible. I don't know how long that'll last. But yeah, no, we are in week 3 of that. Not a whole lot going on in terms of the structure of Convergence. I've mentioned before, every week is of a different time period in DC's history. This one, I don't see how next week is going to be any different, because we've been moving back in time. First we had Flashpoint, then we had, or pre-Flashpoint I should say, then we had pre-Zero Hour. Right now, this week, is pre-Crisis on Infinite Earths, which means like the moment right before Crisis happens. There's not really a time period before that unless you just go straight into Golden Age. Maybe that's what they'll do? I kind of checked the wiki page and it didn't seem like this week and next week have any difference at all. It's just 2 weeks of all the characters from the period of 1984-1985. So maybe this is just a dual-wielding thing, but regardless, let me tell you what's coming out this week. So this week we have, obviously, Convergence number 3, the main miniseries is happening. And then in terms of tie-ins, we have Batman and the Outsiders, Green Lantern Corps, Hawkman, Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes, The Avengers of Superman, Justice League of America, New Teen Titans, Swamp Thing, The Flash, and Wonder Woman. That is not the order I'll be covering them in, but that is the order that they're printed on my little piece of paper here that I use to keep track of things. So yeah, I don't really have much more to say about this episode. If you're looking for suggestions, if you're like, oh god, Convergence month, why should I even bother watching this episode? I'll tell you why, because I need you to. If my numbers tank for this month, I just can't handle that. I really cannot. But if you need a specific comic, Swamp Thing was pretty good, and I'd say Adventures of Superman was also up there. So definitely check out those two if you're just curious about some good comics that came out of an objectively not so good event. But regardless, that is all I think I really need to say up top. Like I said, next week we got a little bit of special stuff, so be sure to tune into the end of the episode to learn about that. But yeah, Convergence. Convergence number 3, written by Jeff King, art by Steven Segovia. So last issue, the group ran across Deimos, who is just a guy as far as they're concerned, but he apparently had a vision that he was going to run into these heroes and they blah, blah, blah. So we open up with them still going up against, or finding Deimos, helping him to his feet. And he's like, yes, the Scrolls of Blood predicted you show up. And again, really want to remind the audience here, Deimos has skulls for knee pads and a collar with spikes like jutting out in all directions. He is the most villain-coded thing I've ever seen. But everyone's like, oh, Deimos, let us help you to your feet. You're great. You know how to get off of this planet? And he's like, yeah, totally, definitely. So Flash runs around on a perimeter check, and he's like, yeah, I'll totally help you guys out. You've saved my life. I owe it to you. And when Flash is like, there's no drones anywhere around here, there's no way they could sneak up on us, and then all of a sudden a bunch of drones come up from underground, start attacking them. So Alan Scott is unwilling to tap into the planet because obviously it hurt him last time. Yolanda's just scratching them with her special sharp claws. Flash is doing a couple of like super speed tackles, but really the big hitter here is Val-Zod, who starts throwing punches, throws him up into the sky. And the drones are like, oh, that's an actual threat adapting. And so they shoot out a special smart net web thing that grabs up Valzad, and he's unable to move. So we cut over to Telos, who's like, all right, cool. We took care of those guys. The Kryptonian's not a threat anymore. Let me check out the cities. How are they doing? Wait a minute. That city over there. What is that one? Kandor? The bottled city of Kandor? It's just talking. They ain't fighting. What the hell's going on here? So we cut over to Kandor, and they're just like, oh, Kandorians, we've been bottled longer for anybody else. We gotta stay resolute. We will not be puppets. And then Telos pops up being like, excuse me, did you not hear my giant announcement? You all must fight. Go out and fight. And everyone freaks out for a moment until we get the superheroes, which I believe are Nightwing, no relation, and Flamebird. And they're like, we will not fight in your violent games, Telos. And he's like, yeah, you will. So we cut back over and we see something has taken out the drones that were containing Valzad. And he's like, Flash, was that you? And he's like, no, I didn't do it. That was missiles. What makes you think I got missiles? And we cut over to the Batmobile being flown in by Thomas Wayne and Dick Grayson. And as they're flying in, firing off missiles, they're taking out all the drones, along with Superman and Yolanda still doing their fair share. The Batmobile lands, and Thomas is like, well, we went a bit too hard in it, and now it's malfunctioning, so whoopsie, can't use the Batmobile for the rest of this. So they get out. And we cut back over to Kandor, and everyone's just like, oh, we were the first city bottled, Telos. We're not going to do this. We're behind Nightwing and Flamebird. And he's like, yeah, we always have a choice. And then Telos just impales Nightwing on a whole bunch of spikes. Kandor opens fire with machine guns, as far as I could tell. And Telos is just like, you guys were a city of supermen. You had the best chance out of any of them, and you're choosing to die. Whatever. And so he just blows up the entire city of Kandor and says, let this be a lesson. Don't mess with Telos. So we cut over to like everyone recovering after fighting the drones, and Deimos is talking to Alan Scott, and he's like, yeah, look, we can rest later, but like right now, we are under the threat of Telos constantly. He'll be back. He'll take care of things. We have to move quickly. And Alan's like, I sense there's something at the center of this planet that Telos fears. Are you able to take us to it? And he's like, Telos is a slave to Brainiac as much as anybody else here, but I have found the knowledge and the power to help you stop him. So come with me. And finally, everyone's like, I'm thinking this guy might be a villain. Has anyone else noticed the skulls? But then Deimos is like, well, do you really have any options here? And Alan's like, no, guess not. All right, let's go with it. But then Batman's like, you guys go on. I'm staying behind. There's something I need to take care of. And Alan Scott's like, we shouldn't split up. And he's like, no, I'm Batman. I'm splitting up. And Dick Grayson's just like, and I'm staying with him. And he says, yeah, look, I know we barely know each other, but you're not the type to leave your friends without a reason. I'm not leaving you on your own. So the rest of the group goes on while Dick Grayson and Batman stay behind. And Batman's like, look, the reason I stay behind is I'm out of Miraclo. I'm no longer able to punch with the force of a megaton rocket or whatever. I'm just a dude, an old dude at that. And someone followed us out of Gotham City. And we need to take care of whoever that is. So we follow the one group as they descend a bunch of stairs down deep into Telos, and everyone's like, "Ooh, I don't like this. It feels weird. I don't like what's going on here." And Deimos is like, "Oh, good news. The entrance is still here." And they step out into a giant-ass fantasy world that he says, this is Skartaris. And they're all like, so why is this place here? Like, how is Telos not able to tell this is here? And he's like, oh, yes, it is... because it's underneath the planet, different rules or something, blah, blah, blah. But no, I was driven from my land, Skartaris, by a mad despot who now claims it as his own. And we cut into, I guess, the depths of Skartaris, where there's this strange machine that's picking up a couple of villains that I like halfway recognize. One of them is Monarch, and the other is Degaton. And apparently they both have something to do with chronal energy. Deimos mentions this as well. He says, yes, chronal energy, my chronal powers, blah, blah, blah. We see that a woman named Shakira is currently working at the whim of Deimos and is taking Monarch and Degaton and putting them into a time bubble looking thing, and it's like, yep, I need to lock you away with all the other time people, and there's a bunch of other people in the bubble, and says, yeah, and you're going off in there until we need you again. So that's that. And then we cut over to Thomas Wayne and Dick Grayson. They're being surrounded by a bunch of cars and motorcycles coming out of Gotham. And Dick Grayson's like, well, who knows? Maybe they're friendly. Why would you assume they're a threat? And out steps Professor Pig wearing his pig mask. And it's like, okay, yeah, they're probably villains. That's fair. And everyone's like, well, you're not our Batman, but we're going to kill you nonetheless. And a Man-Bat swoops down, grabs Dick Grayson. So it's just Batman fighting against like all the D-listers. There's Flamingo, Professor Pig. I don't think they even give one of these guys a name. But ultimately, they get a hold of Thomas and they start holding him back. And Dr. Hurt is like, yes, first thing we do is kill the Batman, and then we will kill the boy. And Batman's like, all right, cool, come and get it. Everybody close, get in close now. And he presses a button, and they all explode. Batman suicide bombs his way out of it. So Dick Grayson crashes to the ground because Man-Bat was wounded or something. And he goes on this thing about like, Batman was like a father figure to me. He did all this stuff and he was truly a great person and blah, blah, blah. And he says, and I swear I will live on. And then Dick Grayson gets shot. He gets shot in the back, and it turns out it's Joker. Post-crisis Joker is walking around and he's like, you're not Batman, but you sure do seem familiar. But yeah, how does it feel that he did that whole sacrifice just to save your life, and now I'm going to shoot you? And Dick Grayson's like, I can't feel my legs. And he's like, that also feels familiar. Weird how that works. And then all of a sudden Tello shows up and snaps Joker's neck. And he says, that dude sucks. No matter what world it's from, that dude sucks. And he looks over at Dick Grayson, and Dick's like, what, you're here to kill me? Go ahead, do it. And he's like, no, you're going to tell me where your friends are. And he looks very menacingly at him. So, yeah. All right, Batman's dead. Didn't see it coming, but all right, sure. That's how we want to play it. I don't know. It's not like an awful issue by any means, but it also doesn't feel like much was really accomplished here. It's doing a slow burn, and I can appreciate that in a lot of books, but I still haven't gotten anything to latch onto here yet in terms of the main plot. A couple of the tie-ins have been doing some heavy lifting, but like this has just been we're just gonna pal around until we find something to do. And I still don't feel like they found something to do yet. They're just kind of waiting for it to happen. So yeah, 6. I mean, it's not an awful book. The art is okay. It's just not grabbing me. So yeah, 6. Convergence, Superboy, and the Legion of Superheroes #1, written by Stuart Moore, art by Gus Storms. So this is a bit of a weird one, because all of the other stuff from this week specifically takes place in pre-Crisis on Infinite Earths Gotham, except for this one, which is from the 30th century, and it's Metropolis. And we open up with Superboy saying, hey everybody, it's your boy, Superboy. It's been a year of us under the dome, but I just want to tell you guys, don't lose hope. For the love of God, don't lose it. We got all these people looking at stuff on the domes. We got Brainiac 5 doing science stuff on it. We're doing everything we can, and don't give up hope. We'll figure out how to do it. And they also point out that Wildfire, once everyone lost their powers, Wildfire's whole thing is just being energy. So the moment the dome came down, he just kind of dissipated into nothing. But his suit is still kept very well preserved. Wink, wink. So Superboy hops off the air after he tells everybody, like, we'll find a way out of this for sure. And it looks like the person filming is Lightning Lass, who's like, hey, that was great. That was fantastic. You're doing a good job of keeping the people hopeful and all that. And maybe we should stop calling you Superboy. Maybe you're Superman now. And Superboy just kind of turns around, leaves, and he goes into the In Memoriam Hall, and he just sits down. And he's like, I miss my mom. I miss my pop. I miss Lana. I miss my dog. And he just cries for a little bit. So at that point, a couple of Legionnaires come in and say, hey, we need your help. We then cut over to Brainiac 5's lab, where he is being alerted that the planet itself is making contact with him through this computer. And the computer, like, he starts talking to it. He's like, where are we? And it goes, where are we? And it's like, are you just repeating me? I'm asking you a question. And it says, we are here, but soon we are there. And it shows an image of two overlapping circles. And Brainiac 5's like, what does this image represent? What's going on? And then all of a sudden, his wall of his lab gets busted down by the Legionnaires. And they're like, hey, Brainiac 5, you have been stuck in your lab for like weeks and we haven't heard from you. We were worried, so we busted down the door right then. And he's like, you idiots, I finally made contact with the planet. I was gonna figure out what was going on here. And they're like, I'm sorry, planet? Are we not on Earth? I thought we were still on Earth. And he's like, no, we're not on Earth. The background radiation and all that says no, we're somewhere else. I don't even know if we're in the multiverse anymore. We're somewhere else. And like he said, he was hoping to let them know about this stuff once he got more information, but that didn't work out when they busted down the walls to his lab. So Superboy looks out over a balcony and Lightning Lass comes up. And she's like, I was dating Timberwolf, but then he stormed off before the dome came down. And now, I don't even know if I'm ever going to see him again. Long story short, I'm single. So at that point, Superboy points out, look, even if we're not on Earth anymore, I'm 1,000 years displaced in time. I always thought the being in the Legion meant I could just do these fun, quirky adventures, and then I'd be back home in Kansas and not have to worry about any of that stuff. But I've been stuck here for a year without my powers, and things suck. I don't like it. And at that point, she chimes in being like, well, maybe a fantasy world for you, but like, it's our lives. Check out all of this stuff that's happened to the Legion of Superheroes. And I don't know, something about Darkseid and an Earth War, and Karate Kid is dead, and how she was tortured by her own brother, Lightning Lad, it looks like. And that's how she got her powers in the first place. But then Dome came down and she lost them. And Superboy's like, yeah, okay, I'm sorry. You've been through a lot. And she's like, I don't want you to be sorry. Just be Superboy, be hopeful, be cool. You were a legend, and there's a reason for that. And as they're getting closer, and she's like, maybe we're not boys or lasses anymore after all. And they start to like move forward into a kiss, and there's a tiny little spark of electricity between them. And they're like, hold up. Do you have your lightning powers? Is that a thing that's happening right now? And then the dome starts coming down. Telos does this thing. Hey, everybody, dome's coming down. Time to fight. And in comes Colossal Lad, who's now like 40 feet tall. He was stuck at 12 feet tall, but now he's like super huge. And he's like, hey, everybody, check it out. I can do this. They're like, yeah, we get the picture. Everyone has their powers. So everyone meet up in the main computer room. And Lightning Lass fires a bolt of electricity over at Superboy. It's just like, I'm just checking. Yeah, you're good. So as they get in there, Brainiac says like, yeah, I saw the two circles on there. At first I thought it had something to do with the dome, but now I don't know. It's familiar. Something about that is familiar to me. And they say, yeah, look, the science police have been out scouting the planet. They're seeing what all is going on out there. They're sending a lot of data, but like, the voice said we had to fight. What are we going to do about that? And Superboy basically says, well, we need to find out more. And I'm not super keen on the idea of us going out and killing people. And a couple of the other Legionnaires, I don't know their names, are basically like, well, what if that's our only option? Like, what if that's the only way to defend Metropolis? It would mean killing everybody else in here. What if it's our only way home? And we see Invisible Kid, Lad, Boy, whoever, and some other one are like, how about we go in? We're the espionage team. We can go in. And they're like, Chameleon Lad was on the espionage team and he's not here. And it's like, yeah, well, we can run it with two then. What's the big deal? But ultimately, before they're able to really decide on anything, except that Superboy is kind of the de facto leader right now because he's Superboy, big hologram pops up saying, alert, alert, we need help. We're being breached. Get out there, Legion. Everyone just goes off to fly out. They're ready to start fighting. And Superboy and one of the other ones, Power Guy, they look down using their supervision and see that inside of Metropolis City Square are a bunch of knights in armor riding giant Dalmatians. And what bare minimum I know is that these are apparently the Atomic Knights. What does that mean? I'm not so sure, but Atomic Knights. So Art style is very hit or miss for me. There are a couple panels that really work well of selling that, like, these are kids, but then there's always something just a little unsettling about Superboy, where he just looks like he's simultaneously, like, 18 and 38 at the same time. It's something about, like, the cheekbones just doesn't quite work for me. But no, I think that it's a decently well-written issue. It doesn't play too heavy on the individual Legionnaires' identities to the point where it feels like it's detracting from the story, trying to keep track of all of them, but it does a good enough job of seeing here's what their powers are and why they would be important if we were focusing on them. It just gives them an identity, I guess, is the long story short. Also hinting at the fact that Brainiac 5 has an awareness of what's going on here in some tiny little semblance is good writing, considering this is all a Brainiac story. So I like that they bring that to the forefront, and I hope that it gets a little bit more exploration in the next issue. So I'm going to say this one is I'm going to say 7. I feel like it's at that level. It's not quite shooting for the stars yet, but it is at least decent. Convergence Green Lantern Corps #1, written by David Gallaher and Steve Ellis, art also by Steve Ellis. So this issue picks up with seemingly a Justice League roll call. We get Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Flash, and then Green Lantern, but like with a question mark, because turns out this isn't Justice League. This is a bunch of kids playing Justice League, and they're all wearing the t-shirts and have the matching logos and all that. But there are 2 kids who want to be Green Lantern, and one of them's wearing the t-shirt, but the other one's wearing the ring, and they start arguing over who deserves to be Green Lantern because of that. And in walks their coach, Guy Gardner, who says, "Hey, whoa, hey, all right, we only need one Green Lantern at a time. He's got the shirt, so he gets precedence. Kid with the ring, maybe you could be a different hero. Aquaman, Hawkman, Gleek," and there's like, who? No, I don't want to be any of those ones. It's like, okay, well then how about you be a bad guy instead? And he's like, all right, who do you have in mind? And he's throwing out like Lex Luthor, Toyman, Brainiac, any of those. And the kid's like, nah, I don't like any of them. And he's just like, okay, what do you have in mind then? And he thinks for a second, and he holds up his ring, and he goes, Sinestro. And Guy Gardner apparently has a panic attack at that. So sometime later, he's talking to Dr. Leslie Tompkins at, by the way, that was Gotham Elementary. We're all in Gotham City at this point. And he just kind of recaps what is pre-crisis Guy Gardner's deal. Like, what's his whole thing? And apparently he was Green Lantern for all of about a hot minute, and then he got put into a coma by Sinestro, and that's more or less all of it. He was brought back, and John Stewart was made Green Lantern instead of him, so not that cool. And as he's talking to Leslie Tompkins, she's just like, hey, look, you went through some traumatic stuff. Like, it's okay, but you need to, like, go through it a little bit. You need to work through what happened here. And he also says, yeah, not only did all of that happen, let me tell you about Hal Jordan. Let me tell you my experience with him. And apparently Hal, he's upset that Hal had everything handed to him while he had to, like, bite for every tiny little thing he's ever gotten. But then when he fills in for Green Lantern, he goes into a coma. Also, apparently, he goes into the Phantom Zone and was tortured and lobotomized. And while that's happening, Hal nearly marries Guy's fiance. And then when everything finally comes back, he's engaged to Carol Ferris instead. So he just, like, takes Guy's life entirely for granted, throws it away, and then does something else with it. So, Leslie Tompkins basically like, yeah, look, I want to see you more often. We're going to get to the root of these episodes and help you move forward and try to figure out what's going on there. You're not alone here. And we see that as he's leaving, there's an incoming call from the Gotham garage, and we don't find out who's on the other side, but Leslie Tompkins like, yeah, he's not doing good, man. He's like right on the edge. He's have overstimulation and stress, and I don't think under the dome he's going to be able to get the help he needs. I genuinely don't believe so. So Guy goes back to his apartment, and he turns on his messages. Turns out he missed a shift down at the food bank, so he's not going to get his benefits for the week, and he freaks out. He throws one of his like statues, little trophies that he's got for karate, against the wall, and we see that on there is the invitation to an engagement party for Hal and Carol Ferris. And so he goes and knocks on Carol Ferris's door, says like, hey, I'm here for Hal Jordan. And she's like, yeah, you and everyone else, not here. But as he goes to leave, she's like, wait a minute, hold on, are you Guy Gardner? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, okay, we need to talk. So they get in, and she basically says, yeah, Hal and I, we were more or less married for like 6 days. Like that's basically all it even was. And she says that he left the Green Lantern Corps for her, but then the dome came down and he just could not deal, and so he ran off and he left, and she doesn't know where he is, but she thinks that John Stewart does know, because Green Lanterns, they stick together, I guess. So he's like, all right, where can I find John Stewart? And she's like, oh, he's working construction down by the dock, but hey, if you do find Hal, tell him that I miss him, tell him I need to see him. So we go down by the docks. Guy meets up with John Stewart. And John's like, oh, hey, Guy, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, I'm looking for Hal. And he's like, I can't help you. And he's like, okay, well, Carol said you could. And he's like, okay, how about I get you a hard hat and we can talk? And so they head off the site to a more secluded area. And as they're looking around, he's just like, look, I don't know what Carol told you, but I didn't want this job. And he's like, what, being an architect? It's like, no, the Green Lantern thing. I was brought in because there literally was nothing else that could have happened. And the dome came down. I've been blaming myself for the past year, thinking I'm the Green Lantern. I should have been able to stop that. But like, no, I couldn't. There was nothing there. So he basically says, look, if you're looking for Hal Jordan, after the ring stopped working, he started working on a way to try to restore them. And he's become a recluse down at the Gotham garage. So Guy goes down there, goes to the garage. Hal is just beaming out on all frequencies, trying to contact anybody. He's clearly not doing so hot. And he figures out that something about a long-range antenna that was built back in 1984. He's using the same sort of technology to pierce the dome's energy field and contact Oa. And Guy's like, okay, all right, fully understand that. Counterpoint, and he pulls out a baseball bat and starts swinging and just hits all the machines, starts breaking everything. Hal's like, what in the hell are you doing? You said you wanted to talk. And he's like, yeah, this is how I talk. You destroyed my life. You took everything I had. I'm taking my shot at yours. And Hal pulls out a taser. He's ready to fire it. And he's like, no, Guy, you don't understand. I've been working with Dr. Tompkins. And then he just gets interrupted by Telos, who comes over the comms and tells everybody, hey, everybody, dome's coming down. Time to fight. And Guy's like, hell yeah, man. The message, like, the dome's coming down. We can get out of here. And then Hal, who's had his power battery this whole time, looks over, sees that it's glowing green again, and he's like, the Green Lantern Corps back. I get to fight along John Stewart again. And Guy's got his ring around his neck. He puts it on his finger. He's like, give me a charge, bro. And Hal's like, no, we don't need you. I don't want you out there. And he's like, no, I need to go out there and be Green Lantern again. To which point Hal punches him in the face and says, you nearly died because of me. I'm not letting that happen again. So he says the oath, he gets a recharge, and he leaves Guy all alone in his lab. And Guy, I don't know where he pulls it out of, but he finds a leather jacket, the baseball bat, the taser, and some weird little computer thing he's got, along with a motorcycle. And he's like, all right, well, if you're not going to let me be a Green Lantern to help fight out there, I'm just going to be Guy Gardner. And he goes out and says, it's finally party time, as he looks as 90s as humanly possible. I don't have a major problem with this issue, but I do have one small critique, and that small critique is it seems like the backstory between Guy, John, and Hal leading up into Crisis was wildly complicated. Like, there was they said he got tortured and lobotomized in the Phantom Zone and then was knocked into a coma, and that was a separate thing entirely. I feel like I could have used just a little bit more elaboration. Maybe just like a full page where instead of putting it through the framing device of talking to the therapist, just give me a full flashback page. Just let me see how it happened, because I don't feel like I fully understand it. The trade I'm reading from has little bits at the back that basically give a breakdown of here's what was going on in continuity during the point where this group was taken from. And it doesn't really answer many of my questions. If anything, I'm still confused as to how a lot of it happened, but regardless, it's not a horrible issue. I think it actually gives a lot more promise than most of these tie-in issues do as to actually having a interesting character development over the course of it. I feel like because we don't know who the Green Lantern Corps is fighting against, they could be up against anybody on the other side. I think that it does a good job of giving the hint that this is more about the internal debates between Guy, John, and Hal, and I like that as an idea. We'll see how they deliver. So for this one, I think I'm going to give it, I'm going to say 6.5. Like I said, just my minor critiques probably could have gotten up to like a 7 or a 7.5 for me personally, but it's just not quite at that 7 range for me quite yet. We'll see what happens next issue. Convergence, Batman and the Outsiders, #1, written by Marc Andreyko, art by Carlos D'Anda. So we are in Gotham pre-crisis, and I don't know anything about the Outsiders, not really at least. I will say that this issue does a decent job of letting me know the bare bones essentials, but we open with Batman just saying, I had a good team and the fight against evil is endless and I had good soldiers, brave warriors, always prepared, and these Outsiders were whatever. But then the dome came down and it's been almost a year and they've had to learn to adapt. And we see Batman swinging through the city until he lands on a perch where Jim Gordon's just standing there waiting, and he's like, oh, hey, how's it going? And Batman wasn't expecting him, and he's like, I finally snuck up on you. So he points out, yeah, look, things have gone pretty smoothly for a while now, but people are looking for a solution. Like, that is... like, everyone's kind of banding together here. We're not relying on you, Batman, but we are hoping you might have something at some point. And he's like, yeah, no, I get it. Whoever the dome is, it's much bigger than Joker or Riddler or anything like that. I feel bad that I'm not delivering for Gotham. And we cut across town as he starts flying off again. And we see Black Lightning is helping to install solar panels to, like, power the grid. And is one of the guys there is just like, hey, aren't you Black Lightning? You're dressed up in the whole outfit and all that. Can't you just zap us some power? And he's like, well, these things are photon collectors, and they don't call me Black Photon Collector. Also, I don't have my powers. And the guy's like, so you're just playing dress up then? And he's like, yeah, I guess so. Anyway, back to work. We then cut over to the free clinic, where we see Dr. Leslie Tompkins is like on the verge of breaking down just because it's so overrun and there barely enough anything to get going there. And Katana is making her way through the crowd and just like, hey, yeah, Katana, sorry about the crowd. Like, they're all just scared, all that. And we see that a young woman named Gabrielle, who I believe is a member of the team, but I could not tell you the name based off of it. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but she's like the rainbow looking one. She's apparently in like a coma. She is, you know, when all of that stuff was going down, she was sick, and so she's just kept here completely separate from everything else. And Katana's like, oh, please come back to us. She's so upset about this. We then cut over to Geoforce, who's just cracking up pavement and like moving giant rocks. I'm not gonna lie, I don't understand how he can do this unless it is actually just his own strength. Like, he is this ridiculously strong, but it seems superhuman. And it's just, he just says, like, yes, I feel rage, my own helplessness, what happened to my country of Markovia, all this stuff. And we see that he's just hanging out at a bar doing arm wrestling in his spare time, just trying to drink away his pain, I suppose. We then cut over to the only person who's doing decently under the dome, and that is Metamorpho, aka Rex, who he's been under this dome, and as such, he lost his Metamorpho powers, and he's just human again. He's just a guy who is now able to hug and kiss and smooch on his wife, I believe. Was it Sapphire Stag? That's it. And so he's having a great time, and he's like, yeah, no, this is fantastic. I'm happy to have this. So we then cut over to Batman, who is looking at the Bat computer, and he's like, yeah, look, I figured out what the dome was 12 hours after it came down. That doesn't mean I can crack it. I have no clues, nothing to go off of. Why hasn't anyone taken credit for this? It's baffling to me. And Alfred comes in, and he's like, yes, Master Wein, TikTok on that, because everybody's getting a little bit stir crazy, except for Metamorpho, obviously. And Batman's like, yeah, I know, isn't that weird? Everyone else's lives had to be ruined for Metamorpho to be happy. And Alfred tells him, get some rest, everything's going to be clear in the morning. So it rolls over to the next day. It's officially 1 full year that this place has been under the dome, and everyone's just kind of going about their morning normally, doing whatever, until all of a sudden Telos over the comms, and he's like, hey, I'm dropping the dome, everybody's gonna have to fight each other. And Batman's like taking a nap. He wakes up and he's like, well, what's going on here? We see Gabrielle in the hospital bed. She's starting to stir a little bit. We see Rex and Sapphire were in the shower making out, when all of a sudden his hair starts falling out and he starts like turning into a gas, and Sapphire's arm starts boiling as well because it wasn't supposed to touch her. So everyone's powers are coming back. It's a whole big thing. And we do see that the hospital that Gabrielle is in, the room she's in, explodes with energy as she seemingly wakes up, and Katana may be caught in the crossfire there. Geoforce, meanwhile, he flies up into the sky and he sees how the entirety of the city is surrounded by desert that's just spotted with a few other cities nearby. And running as fast as they possibly can from one of the other cities is OMAC, the one-man army corps with an army of mutants. And he's just screaming out, all right, get in there, mutants, and kill them all. So, OMAC. I don't know what timeline, what world OMAC's supposed to be from. I think OMAC is from Kamandi. If I'm remembering Multiversity right, he's from the Last Boy on Earth stuff that Jack Kirby did. So maybe it's from that city. I think that's also maybe a few other things that happened in this week that are attacking Gotham. But regardless, I mean, it's a choice. We'll see how the fight goes. I feel like this is going to be more focused on the outsiders themselves than who they're fighting, because it just seems like it's going to be a faceless horde rather than specifically caring about it being the fight against OMAC. It's going to be more about the mutants and how they can hold together the city in the meantime. But no, I like the art style. It's really good. I would like a little bit more of an introduction for specifically Gabrielle, whoever she is. I really wish I had a name for her. I think that's honestly my biggest problem here is I don't even know who she's supposed to be. Yeah, no idea. So yeah, I'm going to say this one is I'm thinking 7. Yeah, it barely squeaks by onto that 7, but it gives me enough to care for the characters and the small things that they're doing. Even something as small as Black Lightning, I skipped over it, but when he stepped outside onto his balcony, like on the following morning, and he just takes a sip of his coffee and then pours it into a plant because he's like, yeah, well, happy birthday to the dome. Hope it doesn't get a second one. Just tiny moments like that were working for me. So yeah, 7 for this. Hopefully we can improve even more on the next issue. Convergence, Adventures of Superman #1, written by Marv, Wolfman, art by Roberto Viacava. So, taking place in Gotham City inside of Wein Tech pre-crisis, we have Superman and Supergirl talking with Lucius Fox. And we just jump right into the middle of this story, I feel like, where it turns out that underneath the dome, and like a full year afterwards, we have Superman and Lucius have come up with this idea of recreating the Phantom Zone projector using technology at Wein Tech by hooking up a subconscious mind reading device to Supergirl, who was around when the original Phantom Zone projector was made on Krypton. And they're going to just dangle some technology parts near each other until the light turns green on her helmet, and that signifies that her subconscious is recognizing something of those parts being together. and they'll build a working Phantom Zone projector out of that. And their plan is they're going to go into the Phantom Zone and come out of it outside the dome. Fair enough on the plan. My biggest concern here is that after a page and a half of just dangling a crystal randomly around, it activates and teleports them to the Phantom Zone. But in doing so, it explodes on Lucius's end, and that's the exact moment that Telos comes over the comm and says, "Hey everybody, dome's coming down, make sure your champions are ready to fight." And Lucius also sees a giant horde of sentient apes charging towards them, like down Statue of Liberty behind them. It's Planet of the Apes, but it's actually Kamandi. So Superman and Supergirl have no idea what happened, but they recognize, like, okay, there's no going back. We got to get outside the dome. We got to find a weak spot in the Phantom Zone. There's going to be a bunch of prisoners in here who hate us because our respective dads made this place. So chill. And so they start zooming through the Phantom Zone, looking for any place to go through. And Supergirl makes the point of, like, this is a needle in a haystack situation, and Superman's like, it's far worse than that, but we're super people, it'll be all right. And they make a little bit of small talk about how they think that, you know, this dome represents the same kind of dome that went over top of Argo City before it was exploded. And Superman's like, I don't think so. This seems a lot more like a jail or a zoo cage or something like that. And then all of a sudden, off in the distance, there's this massive explosion, and Superman and Supergirl brace for it. And when they look up, they see a giant crater in the ground nearby. And as they start flying towards it, the skies slowly get more and more red. And Supergirl points that out. Superman's like, it's the Phantom Zone. It does weird things, but just keep heading towards the weird red sky area. So they start flying over there. We see they're being watched by inhabitants of the Phantom Zone. And Superman makes the comment of, like, you know, Supergirl, you're proactive. Like, you're actually able to go out and help people before they even need help. I'm reactive. I just help wherever I feel I need it, and, like, I am envious of you. I think that you've done a great job of becoming your own here on Earth. This is, you know, you're your own person. I'm grateful to have you here. And Supergirl's like, oh my god, I don't know what to say. This is fantastic. And then one of the people watching them from below says, like, there goes the last son of Ellen, that useless ass cousin of his. Let's get them both. And they all start attacking Superman and Supergirl. Superman's like, look, you got to get out of here. Go figure out what's up. We got to split up. It's the only way we can take them all out. So Supergirl starts flying off and just like, you head in the same direction we were going in. I'll find you later. So a bunch of them go through and try to attack Superman. He gets the brunt of them. And they're all just like, oh, you and your stupid family put us in here. And they're throwing punches, they're landing them, until finally Superman is out cold on the floor of the Phantom Zone. And they're like, haha, you know, we were put in here by that stupid-ass trial with the floating ring things. I say, let's go ahead and have a trial by combat on Superman. And then we cut over to Supergirl, who's flying around. She's only got 4 people on her, and she's able to take them out. Just like, haha, I should have had 6. But then as she's making her way closer to the destination, these weird red skies, she goes through a bunch of exploding gas that's coming out of geysers from the ground, and they're showing her life, her previous, all of her memories and stuff like that, mostly in the form of comic book covers from pre-Crisis Comics. And she's like, oh, all these things, but now they're changing. And we see it slowly starts morphing into the storyline of Crisis on Infinite Earths, where Supergirl dies, and she sees her own death there, and she's like, what the hell? The world's being destroyed and I have to die? I go back to Earth and I just die? And she, like, blows away all the gas she doesn't want to see anymore. And she comes to a moral quandary of, like, if we go through with this, if we do escape the dome and get back to Earth, I'm going to die. Like, that's what I just saw there. But if we don't escape the dome, we die anyway. And so she's stuck here and she's like, what's the right thing to do? I don't know. And she comes to the conclusion that even though she doesn't know what the outcome of Crisis on Infinite Earths is going to be, she knows that it is her doing what she needs to do for even the chance of saving everyone else. So she's like, I have to go do that. I have to partake in Crisis. But, like, she was told to wait here by Clark, by Superman, so she's forced to just sit around and watch the images of her death for God knows how long, because Phantom Zone time doesn't move right. And she's like, okay, that's enough of that. I might have been here for weeks for all I know. I gotta go check on Clark. So She flies off. She sees Superman still is about to get jumped by all the Phantom Zone people. And as they're all just lazing about, she goes on a stealth mission, starts abducting them one by one, beating them up and throwing them into a nearby crater. And when there's only like a few of them left, they look and they say, okay, it's the girl. It's got to be her. Find her, bring them to me. And so a bunch of them scatter off, leaving Superman only defended by 2 of them. So she swoops in, grabs the body, and he's weak. He's like, oh, Kara, what's happening? She's like, hey, don't worry about it. We got to go. And so she flies back off towards the gas, but like keeps her distance because she's like, I can't let him see what's inside that gas because otherwise he's not going to let me do the sacrifice. I gotta like keep it separate. So they finally see an opening to go back to the lab. It's not even like outside of the portal. It's just back into the lab. But the rupture is only going to open for a few seconds, so she's got to get there quick. But she gets interrupted by the Phantom Zone people. They jump in the way. It's closed again. They don't have a way to get through. And the Phantom Zone people are like, haha, like we said, you're going to die, Els. And then we cut back to the reality where Lucius is just looking with binoculars outside Wein Tech windows as a bunch of gorillas on horseback are just going through the city saying all humans must die. Yep. I will give them credit. If you have pre-crisis Superman as a character in your book and you say he has to go and fight someone else from some other world, he's gonna win. Like, there are very few things that are going to be able to even put up a fight. So the fact that they put him up against a bunch of gorillas, technically in the fight aspect, but then took him off the board because that's not the main focus of the book, I like that. Also, big shout out to the fact of you've given a character the idea that they are going to die in Crisis. Like, you've given them this vision for whatever reason through hyper time, blah, blah, whatever. And you have to make them come to terms with that. I think that's a great test of like a hero thing. I think that's a good idea of saying like, yeah, no, she's seen this. She has to deal with it now. And she still makes the decision to go with it anyway. That's great character development no matter how you slice it. So all in all, I actually really like this one, despite the fact of objectively, Superman versus a bunch of gorillas is like the dumbest idea. So I'm going to say this is like an 8. I really like the sort of tone that this plays with, and I hope it continues into the next issue, where I don't want more than like 2 pages of Superman just beating up gorillas. I want him to just look imposingly, and the girls go, all right, well, have a good day, sir, and just walk away. So I enjoyed it. Maybe you will too. Convergence Hawkman #1, written by Jeff Parker, art by Tim Truman. So we open up in Gotham City pre-crisis where a bunch of angry rioters are just throwing Molotovs, shouting about, oh, we come from the shadows, oh, this come to help us strike or whatnot. And the cops are like, hey, we're pinned down, can we get back up? And the person on the other end's like, nah, we're stretched too thin, everything's too crazy. But as they are yelling about how trying to police law and order in the end times is stupid, down from the sky comes 2 winged angels, aka Hawkman and Hawkwoman. And as they are recognized by the riders, they're like, cheese it, we gotta go. So everyone starts running. And the Hawks are like, oh, you disrespect the police. That was our job back on Thanagar. Just to make clear to the audience, we are the Hawk people from the other planet, not the ancient Egyptian ones. Really want to make that clear. So they fly around and they're doing all this stuff. And one of them points out saying, oh, enforcers, I can't be taken by you. And Hawkwoman's like, hey, wait a minute. That's what our actual job title was back on Thanagar. We were enforcers. How do you know that? And he's like, oh, I know you. And he presses this button on his harness or whatever that causes Hawkwoman to freeze up in the air. And she ends up dropping the dude. And as everyone looks on like, oh, God, he hit her with something, Hawkman goes to check, and he's just like, oh, he must have had some tech that was from Thanagar. He calls us an enforcer. They come down to go check on him. But, he hit the ground from 120 feet up. He ain't doing great. So he's like, yes, Thanagar, shadows, follow the beacon, hawks. And then he ends up dying. And Hawkman's like, wait a minute, shadows. That's something from a recent story we did. He's one of our people. He's a Thanagarian. And apparently they had a thing about shadow warriors that they fought within the previous year before the dome. And it's like, yeah, I guess there were a bunch of people from Thanagar, some sleeper agents that have infiltrated major cities, including Gotham. So we got to figure it out. This dome prison, someone from our world is there. So we then cut over to their day job, which is at a museum. And I think the owner of the museum is basically like, Dr. Hall, you bail out of here at all times of the day. Don't you? Sure, we're under a dome, but can you at least pretend like you have a 9 to 5? And he's like, sorry, I promise it won't happen again. And we see, as this is happening, Shaira is giving the full tour to a bunch of people there, and it's basically saying like, yes, in ancient times, animals and gods were sometimes conflated. That's why you get ancient Egyptians with crazy animal heads. And they're like, what about end times? You said you were going to talk about end times. I want to hear about the end time stuff. And he's like, sir, I'm getting to that. Anyway, let's talk about more modern myths. Take superheroes. Batman, part man, part bat, and everyone's like, oh, what, we should care about the superheroes? They've let us down. They didn't save us from the dome. They suck. Screw the superheroes. And Cher's like, all right, look, I understand what you're saying, but check this out. And she picks up the Hawk Woman armor that has been put onto this set as like, oh, hey, check it out, another piece of superhero gear, and she puts it on, and she's like, now we assume the mantles of creatures that are known to be survivors, capable, strong, and we rise to that challenge. And she flies up into the air, and everyone's like, crap, that's Hawkwoman. That's actual Hawkwoman. And the owner of this thing is like, why is she wearing the ancient artifacts unless, hold on, is that actually Hawkwoman? And Hawkman's like, yeah, her name's Shaira Hull. I'm Qatar. Sorry. And so she starts flying around, and she's like, you think that this is the end times. You think that there isn't anyone here to help you, but you can make it through this on your own. And if not, we will come and we will fight on your behalf. I will soar, and so can you. And the kids are like, this is the best museum trip ever. So the next morning comes, and apparently there's a giant line around the museum because everyone wants to see the Hawk people, I guess. First time that's ever happened. And as they're flying around, it's like, okay, but we need to focus on what the dude said about Thanagar. Like, we need to figure out where these other Thanagarians are. And they just so happen to, in the early morning light, see an energy distortion coming out of the side of the skyscraper. So they go after it. And as they're flying towards it, the people inside, who are apparently part of the Shadow Warriors or whatever, they're like, crap, Hawk people, we've been found out, someone leaked our location, send out the Manhawks. Hawkman has an enemy called Manhawks. They are more dumb looking than you can imagine, but apparently usually they're able to talk, and they're like banterful or whatever. These ones are bloodthirsty and evil, and so three of them, one of them attacks Hawkman, two of them are after Hawkwoman, and she pulls like a scene straight out of Top Gun where she like flies through a little steam cloud that leads into his crevice, where one of them ends up bashing their head against a wall. So one of them's out, now it's just the other. Hawkman is being torn up by the other one. He's being attacked by the talons of the creature, so he's like, I don't want to do this, but I'm gonna, and he cuts off the leg of the hawk thing, and it falls down to the ground. So now it's only one left. They both grab one of its wings, and they just steer it into the building and crash right through the window of wherever these Shadow Warriors are. So they're like, Warriors, everybody detach from the network, everyone bail. And everyone's like, Shadow Warriors, what are you doing here? You're and they're like, enforcers, kill the enforcers. And they start fighting with each other for all of about like a quarter second, until Hawkwoman says like, we thought there were going to be a lot more of you. And she's like, there are, check it out. And she points behind them where they have basically built up the Matrix, using all of their sleeper cell units or whatever their agents have turned into processing units in order to set up a thing that they call, what's it called? The Absorbiscon, which I don't know, but it does something along the lines of being able to find a way out of the prison. It's just a massive computer that they can use stuff for. And Hawkman and Hawkwoman are like, okay, well, I think we can suspend the law just long enough to see, like, what you got. And they're like, yeah, look, we just found something just last night. We're not even on Earth. And on this planet that we're on, there's a bunch of other cities out there. It's a whole other thing. But the other thing we saw was into the future, like in the crisis timeline, quote unquote. Crisis on Infinite Earths is going to happen, and all of these worlds, all of these realities are going to be merged into one, and our universe is not going to be the one that survives. And then that's where Telos comes in, and he pulls out the thing and says, hey, the domes are coming down, everyone's got to fight. But that's where, as the dome's dissolving, it's like, well, Hawkman's just like, well, what does it matter if we fight? We're going to die anyway. Like, this sucks. And that's where the issue leads off. So yeah, we don't actually get a hint as to who the Hawk people are going to fight, but I like the concept again, because this was something that was also done in Adventures of Superman, where a character's made aware of the fact that they are hurtling towards Crisis on Infinite Earths. What does that mean? Like, how do you deal with the fact that even if you win this battle, you are going to have to go through a reality-ending event regardless? So I like it. I think it's a solid idea. It's made me, I wouldn't say care about the Hawk people, but it's made me more interested in the Hawk people more than any other Hawk book has, especially in the New 52. So yeah, I enjoy it. I think it's a solidly done issue. My only critique would be a little bit of backstory, just a little bit of like, who are the Shadow Warriors? What are the Manhawks? Like, they do tiny little things that kind of just hint at, you don't need to know. And I accept that, but I would have liked to know. So I think I'm going to say this one is I'll say it's a 7. It seems unfair to give it a 6.5, but it also doesn't quite feel it's a 7.5 standard. So 7 seems about where I'm at on that. Convergence Wonder Woman #1, written by Larry Hama, art by Joshua Middleton. So we open up in Gotham City pre-crisis, where Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor have just been chilling. They've just been living the life, doing what they can. But Steve Trevor's a little pissed off. He's like, oh, God, morning. You know, I miss the old sunsets. This is like light gray. I miss the vibrant pinks and oranges. And Wonder Woman's like, you do understand it's because of pollution, right? Like, that's like 90% of why that happened. But yeah, so she gets up. They start getting ready for their morning routine. And basically, apparently Edda, who is also stuck in Gotham, has joined this new culty religion thing of the angels, where people think that angels are going to come down and break the dome. And it's just kind of a new age sort of cult thing going on. But, you know, Wonder Woman points out that whenever people go through a traumatic time they can't explain, they kind of turn to a spiritual side of things. And Steve doesn't buy that. He's like, nah, giant alien did it. And she's like, and that sounds more reasonable than angels. And he's like, we've met giant aliens. I am thinking that that's more fair. So apparently Wonder Woman works with a outreach program that helps people who are basically at the end of life, and you know, they're running out of medicine here, so they're doing the best they can. Edda helps with that. Steve is still in the military, but God bless you if you can tell us what they did there. So we see as Wonder Woman goes to meet one of their clients, who's got a massive tumor in her head. Edda has apparently convinced her to join the whole angel cult thing, and she's escorting this old woman out of the house, and Wonder Woman's like, whoa, hey, you are not supposed to be going places like that. We can assist you where you need to go. And she's like, I want to go see the angels. And they're just like, you heard her. We got to go see the angels. Wonder Woman's like, hey, could you maybe, I don't know, not spread the cult thing while you're at work? That seems a little bit inappropriate. But as they're leaving this old woman down, there's a bunch of teenagers who are basically just catcalling and also pointing out, like, man, angels? That's so stupid. There's no such thing as angels. To which Wonder Woman turns around and be like, this old woman has a tumor in her head and she's going to die without any sort of medicine to help her out. So she's going to believe whatever the hell she wants to believe, and you're going to shut up. You got that? And he's like, oh, yeah, okay. So they go down to a near run-down church thing, which is where the group of the angels have set up. And they give a name to the main woman. I think it's like Melissa or something. And she's just like, yes, slow, and soon the high seraphim will come down, and verily, blah, blah, blah. And so the old woman comes up, and she's kneeling in front of the lady at the pulpit and just like, oh, can you feel it, Sister Vera? Can you understand? And she's like, yes, I can feel it. And she just dies. She just, right then and there, just dies at the altar. And Etta runs forward just being like, oh, the tumor must be worse than we thought. She's dead. And so the leader of the church, Miranda, Wonder Woman's like, hey, look, Miranda, I get that you're sincere in your belief, but like, maybe this should be a wake-up call that you should, I don't know, rethink a few things of how you're exploiting these people. And she's like, God works in mysterious ways. Who the hell are you? Why are you don't sound like a believer. What are you doing here, non-believer? Shun the non-believer. Shun the non-believer. And Etta's like, well, now hold on. But before anything can happen, Telos comes over the comms. Hey, everybody, taking away the dome, which you would think these church people are like, oh my God, it's happening. Salvation, we're doing it. But they can see the giant face of Telos in the dome, and they're like, that ain't an angel. This is a test, dear sisters. That's the spawn of Satan. And it's because we have a non-believer in our midst. We have to shun the non-believer extra hard now. And so they take a big staff and bonk it over Wonder Woman's head, and it knocks her out. So at that point, we cut over to Steve Trevor, who's also hearing the Telos thing of everyone's got to fight. And Trevor just immediately bails on his military gig and is just like, hey, you're supposed to stay here, his commanding officer said. And he's like, yeah, well, write me up as AWOL. I got to go help Diana. So we go back to the church where Wonder Woman's still knocked out. She was hit before she became Wonder Woman again. And Etta at this point is like, y'all are crazy. She's not possessed by demons. She's not a agent of Satan or whatever. She's Wonder Woman. And they're going through her bag and being like, oh yeah, this checks out. She is Wonder Woman. But then Miranda doubles down and it's just like, oh, you see? She's a pagan god. She's not our god. She's a different god system, and she's a witch by our standards. So yeah, we gotta get rid of her. And that's where Etta leaps in, just being like, you get your hands off her right now. So there's a little bit of a fight between Etta and the believers. She throws a punch and is just like, all right, you're not getting away with this. I'm going to go call the authorities. So she runs off. Meanwhile, all the believers are like, down into the basement. We have a series of networks of tunnels and such down underneath the church that will take us all over the city. We will remain safe there as long as the agent of Satan is dealing with the dome stuff up there while we wait for the angels. And there's like, okay, but if the dome's coming down, surely we would want to see that, right? And he's like, nope, not as long as it's demonic entity up there. We're staying down here and we will purify what we can. And they basically tie Wonder Woman up using her own lasso, which she did bring along in her bag. And just like, yeah, we'll deal with her in a little bit, but we got to sanctify and purify our chambers in the meantime. So Steve doesn't have any clue where Wonder Woman is. He gets the place where the client is and knew that it was on a specific street. So he goes to that street and he meets up with those teenagers from before. And the teenagers are like, oh yeah, they were talking about that crazy ass angel church thing. It's right down the street or whatever. But like, maybe you should focus up because the sky is literally falling and we see the dome coming apart. And they all realize, oh, we're in space and we're also right at the edge of the dome. So let's take a look. And yep, that's not Earth. That's an alien planet. And there's a bunch of other cities out there. This is crazy. This is what's going on? And so then Etta shows up, runs into Steve and just being like, yeah, it's a church, end of the street. She's down there. You got to go. We got to help right now. But as they're running away, the teens point up to the sky and they're like, wait a minute, hold on. There's some winged creatures flying towards us. Maybe they were right about the angels. To which the mean teenager pops up and goes, those aren't angels. So we then cut back over to Wonder Woman. She's coming to consciousness. She's tied up by a bunch of ropes with her lasso binding her feet. And she's like, oh God, if only I was an actual, like Amazon, if I had the strength back again. She's like, wait a minute, hold on. I don't feel fatigued or heavy like I have in the past year. Something's different now. And she breaks out of her ropes with absolutely no problem, shattering her entire outfit in the process. And in doing so, she swings herself up out of the well and goes and gets her Wonder Woman gear, gets all dressed. Meanwhile, the true believers are making their way out to the entrance of this underground section of their church area, and they see some winged figures at the gates. And they're like, oh, it's the angels. They're here. They've arrived. And one of the angels with horrific glowing red eyes says, may we enter? So as Wonder Woman is fully dressed in her outfit, save for tiara, that is still missing, she goes out and she's ready to fight. Meanwhile, Steve and Etta come down into the caged area because Etta leads them there, and they see that all of the followers of this church have been killed very bloodily, and it seems like the blood has been drained from their bodies. And all of a sudden the gate closes behind them, and we see vampire versions of Joker, Poison Ivy, and Catwoman. And Poison Ivy's wearing the tiara of Wonder Woman. And Joker's like, yep, we're from the Red Rain universe where everybody is vampires. And I am the chosen fighter for my universe, but I don't see the chosen one for this universe. So in the meantime, we're going to have a little snack. And so he swoops up Etta and tells Poison Ivy and Catwoman that they can do what they will to Steve. So at that point, they're ready to start snacking, and Wonder Woman comes in with a flying kick and a hard right hook and takes out Poison Ivy and Catwoman like zero issue. And it's like, yep, all right, they're vampires. There was a Joker vampire who just took Etta. You're going to have to go take care of him. I can handle these two. I got a gun with a bunch of bullets in it, and as such, might not be able to kill them, but can at least, laws of physics, keep them down. So she takes her tiara off of Poison Ivy and just like, all right, I'll be right back. So Poison Ivy starts getting up at that point, and he's like, I've got all these bullets in here, 14 rounds in the magazine, 1 in the tube. And she's like, oh, but none of those bullets are still silver, little golden boy, and you're just nothing but meat. And then all of the followers of the church get up from behind and start attacking as well. And it looks like Steve goes out in a blaze of glory. Meanwhile, Wonder Woman hears the shots being fired. She hesitates, thinking like, oh, I should turn around. But she turns the corner and sees Etta has 2 puncture marks on her neck, and she's being held by a Joker with giant demonic-looking bat wings. And he's like, oh, once you've entered the nether realm between life and death, it all seems like a big joke. So, yeah, we got a Red Rain universe, which is not what I was expecting. That's definitely one for the ages. I really like the art style. Carlos, I believe, was the one on this. Was that right? Or maybe that was the previous comic. I don't know. Whoever was the artist on this, let me get that pulled up. Joshua Middleton. That one was, he really strikes this good in between of making it feel like just a solid silver Bronze Age Wonder Woman story while also getting the creepiness of the Red Rain stuff absolutely nailed. So kudos on that. It did not, neither of them felt out of place either. So I think that this is probably going to be I think I'm going to give it a 7.5. I think that there's room for improvement. I would love to see how we do end up with the end of this story, whether it's going to be some sort of tragic thing or if Wonder Woman somehow manages to save the day with 2 clearly dead civilians. But yeah, it's got promise to it, and I really like the way the characters were done here. So 7.5. Convergence Swamp Thing #1, written by Len Wein, art by Kelley Jones. Pulling in some big names to get this one back. So first 2 pages of this are 100% just backstory. I would say even first 4. It's just basically breaking down what the hell was Swamp Thing's story for anybody unfamiliar. And we get, what's his name? Alec Holland, who apparently had his wife, Linda, lived down in Louisiana Bayou working on a biorestorative formula. Some bad dudes showed up and were trying to put the hurt on him. They knocked him out. When he came to, they've strapped dynamite to his bayou shed or whatever, and he exploded, and he was thrown out into the bayou on fire, and he seemingly died in the waters. But something came back up out of it, and it was Swamp Thing, and it believed it was Alec Holland, and it's like, yes, that monstrosity is me. And we see in the months that followed, he fell in love with a young nurse named Abigail Arcane. However, she was going after a guy named Matt Cable, fell in love, got married there, and so he was ultimately left on his own. When he went back to the swamp, he was captured and killed by agents of a corporation called Sunderland. They autopsied him and discovered that he was not a man. He was a plant that believed he was a man, aka Alec Holland. So when he got back out and dealt with them, he went back to the bayou, found the remains of Alec, and Abigail, who showed back up by that point, put Alec to rest. And once they did so, he's like, yeah, sleep in peace. All right, so what do we do now? And Alec, I'm going to say Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing is like, yep, well, now I experiment with the green that I have this connection to. I see what I can do with it. And we see him doing little tests and finding out that he can basically make copies of his bodies and transfer his consciousness over between. And she's like, oh, that's awesome. Cute trick. What's next? And he's like, oh, I don't know. But she points out, very recently all the skies have been red. And red skies seem a little bit ominous. You know what that's about? And he's like, no, but I can... The green doesn't know what's up, but if somebody does, I know who it is. And he basically means Batman. He's like, I'm going to go talk to Batman. To which Abby's like, maybe Superman would be a better guess. Maybe you could do that. And Swamp Thing's like, I understand your point, but I feel compelled to go to Gotham for some reason. So yeah, I'm going to have to go there. And so he's about to just like teleport his way over using the green. However, she's like, wait, hold on. I want to come with you. I really don't want to go home to my husband right now if you catch my drift. And he's like, all right, fair enough, but you're paying the transportation fees to get a giant green monster there. So they end up taking a private car on a train and taking their way to Gotham. And he's like, yeah, let's go to Gotham Park. I can get back in contact with the green and they can tell me where Batman is. And they start walking their way there. A kid is like, mommy, a giant green monster. And the mom's just like, no more candy until you're 21. So they get to Gotham Park and he starts bonding with the green. He's like, all right, Abby, you just wait here and then it'll tell me where to find Batman. And as soon as he starts to go into it, the dome comes down and all of a sudden he loses his connection to the green and he's like, oh God, I don't understand what's happened. It was painful as hell. And so he starts freaking out and he realizes that Gotham has now been sealed off from the rest of the world. And he's like, I feel so weak all of a sudden. I don't know what to do. There's got to be some way I can project myself out of here. I got to reconnect with the green. And he just starts like pushing himself. And Abby's just like, Alec, what's going on? And Swamp Thing's like, we're trapped inside here with everybody else. So they stay for the night. The next day, Abby's like, okay, something's going on. I got to go and check to see what's happening in the outside world, outside of this park. I'm going to go do that and I will check in with you. Okay. So you just hide yourself here. And we see Swamp Thing's like trying to make a flower from his hand and just immediately wilts. And he's like, well, you better do it quick. So the next week, she shows back up and just like, hey, Alec, are you here? And he's like, yeah, I'm here. I was resting. I was trying to regain my strength. It felt a little nice to be ingratiated, but I still feel super weak. And she's like, yeah, all right. So I managed to get myself a little 1-bedroom apartment. I got a little job. I'm doing what I can there. It seems like Gotham is pretty normal. Like nobody's freaking out over this, probably because they're so used to the crap that things like Joker and Riddler do. They probably think this is going to be like a week most. And Swamp Thing's like, well, I hope they're right. So at that point, we see weeks pass. Swamp Thing is looking more and more weak as time progresses. He's conserving whatever energy he can, and Abby stops by every day, providing company, and sometimes, as if today, she brings along a bottle of plant food growth. And he's like, oh, fantastic. And so he downs it, and he's like, all right, I'm starting to feel better. I need more. Get me a lot more of that. And she's like, no, there is a limited amount of that in the city. We're going to need to ration the hell out of it to make sure that it can last for as long as we're in here for. And he's like, yeah, all right, that makes sense. But like, how's Gotham doing? Is it still holding together? And at that point, Abby's like, yeah, people are getting a little antsy now. It's getting a little bit iffy, but they're still doing what they can. They made like rooftop gardens and stuff like that. It's working out. So at that point, they're saying, yeah, well, we'll think of something. Months pass. We see Poison Ivy is running through Gotham Park being chased by Batgirl. And she's like, haha, Batgirl, only Batman's ever caught me before. You ain't done shit. And all of a sudden, she's just hit over the head with a branch. And Batgirl's like, oh, thanks. I've heard about the Guardian of Gotham Park these past few months. And we see, expecting Swamp Thing, it's actually Abby, who's just standing there with a big stick saying, don't mention it. So she goes and visits Swamp Thing again. But Swamp Thing is like corpse. You see the branches that are his ribs, and he's like completely just imbued in the ground, barely staying alive. She's brought along a wheelbarrow of fertilizer, starts shoveling it onto Swamp Thing, saying like, this is the last of it I can get my hands on. I don't know what we're gonna do next. This is the last I can figure out. But Swamp Thing's like, all right, I got a little bit of juice. I'm able to at least pull myself up. That's something. And then Telos pops over the comm. He says, hey, everybody, time to fight. And the moment it comes down, Swamp Thing's like, oh my God, I feel great, but also weird, but also great. And so as the dome comes down, he starts connecting to the green again. But he gets this strange shiver down his spine, which is basically, this is not Earth. This is something else. It tastes weird, but it is still technically a green to tap into. And also simultaneously, a giant horde of humanoid bats start flying in over the park, and they all land in front of Swamp Thing, and he's like, I don't know who the hell you are, Green Man, but the big boys said we had to fight, and we smelled dinner, so we're coming by for the feast. And it says a horde scrambled towards them in a giant wave, and through the Swamp Thing, who once thought itself Alec Holland, and his lovely companion were amidst a nightmarish crowd of claws and fangs. And that's it. So it doesn't quite tell you in this story what's going on, but it's the Red Rain universe. It is vampires. That's the whole thing. And I believe Swamp Thing's actually going up against Batman himself. But to put him up against this horde of humanoid bats, I just hope the next issue we get a little bit of a... I don't even need an explanation. I just need the same way that Swamp Thing had a 4-page backstory in this one that said, like, here's how Swamp Thing got to where he was now. Just give me half of that for Red Rain Batman. I just want to know, why does he control a humanoid horde of Batmen? It seems like a little bit of an easy ask. I'm hoping we get that. So, yeah, I'm going to say this one is probably a... I really like Swamp Thing. It's kind of my weakness. I want to say 8, but I don't think it deserves it. So I'm going to go 7.5. But, like, just know, personal taste specifically would absolutely get it to an 8, because I like Swamp Thing. It's a solid character for me who has barely ever gone wrong. Convergence, Justice League of America, #1, written by Fabian Nicieza, art by ChrisCross. So, Justice League of America, aka Justice League of Detroit. We get the lowdown on the whole team in just a minute, but we open up first with Ralph and Sue Dibney, aka the Elongated Man and Sue Dibney. They're just enjoying their breakfast, having a good day, but it turns out that this is the day after Telos announced the domes were coming down, and we see that this is the first time where he's standing in the kitchen preparing breakfast, where he's able to stretch his neck all the way to kiss his wife out in the other room. And he's like, yep, I haven't been able to do that for over a year, and it feels so good to be back in action again. And apparently his wife convinced him, look, when the voice came over, you're going to have one day before you go out and do all that, just for us to enjoy each other. So at that point, he finishes his breakfast and says, all right, I'm going to go back out on duty because this is important here. And she gives him a little boop on the nose, and all of a sudden he's stretching out the window off to join his team. And we see that the team is currently at the gym getting all pumped back into shape because they have not had anything to do for the past year, and so they are not in the ideal fighting form. So we see just a little breakdown of the 4 that are here. We got Elongated Man and how he has consulted with the GCPD over the past year. We got Vixen, who they don't actually call Vixen. They just say Supermodel Mary McCabe, so maybe she didn't have the name, but she was at an animal shelter. We see Steel, who's a cyborg, but when everything went down, his cyborg half also shut down, and so he's been paralyzed on life support for the past few months. And then we got Paco Ramon, who is Vibe, and he lost his Vibe powers and was working at Big Belly Burger. But they're all at the gym now. They're all, trying to get back into shape, doing what they can. And Paco is specifically just like, man, we're going to get our asses kicked. There's no hope here. And everyone's just like, well, with that attitude, come on, we can do this. We got to get ready. So Ralph calls up Sue and he's just like, hey, you have anything going on there? And Sue is with Commissioner Gordon looking over big maps and stuff and just like, no word of an attack. We should all be good right now from whatever's out there. And Ralph is like, well, good. That'll give the big three a chance to jump into action. So at that point, we go down to the docks and we get the idea of who the big three are. And the first one is Aquaman, who springs out of the water right next to where Cindy, aka Gypsy, is. And I think she's part of the team, but for the life of me, they don't involve her at all. So Aquaman apparently has just been hanging out here underneath the bridge that got cut in half because of the dome. And by the way, this is not the big three in terms of like the Trinity. This is the big three of Justice League Detroit. So Aquaman's the one big hitter. He comes out of the water because I guess he just hasn't been around since then. Then Martian Manhunter comes down out of the sky and he's like, yes, I performed aerial reconnaissance. We're fine. There's nothing else going on right now. He was stuck in his human form apparently the whole time, unable to shapeshift out of it. And Gypsy is like, oh my God, John, I've missed you so much. And he's like, I didn't miss you at all. And she's like, wait, what? And he's like, because I was there in the soup kitchen every day that you were volunteering. I was there the whole time, but I didn't have my telepathy. So he connects with Aquaman and then does a scan of the whole city and sees that basically everybody is cool. Nobody's causing much trouble out there. They've just kept on doing their thing. And they're all using like their mental, like holding their fingers to their head. And Gypsy's just like, should I do that? Should I do that too? Would it make me look like I'm part of the team? And they reach out to the third big hitter, which is Zatanna. And she's out doing some thing on a special plane of existence and saying there's no threats coming in from this other plane. So yeah, we're all good. And then all of a sudden, an explosion goes off near Zatanna's meditation spot. It knocks her out and just like, oh, that was an explosion. Do you guys see that? And they see this giant plume coming up out of the ground nearby, and Martian Manhunter's like, oh, it's chaos and panic, we need to go near there. Turns out by the time they get there, Sue and a bunch of firefighters are already there because the explosion was at the gym where the rest of the Justice League was training. And so when they get there, they start lifting up the rocks, all the debris and all that, and Sue's like, they didn't find anybody dead, but they haven't found the team yet. They haven't found the rest of the people. And as they are going through the rubble, Zatanna and the rest of them, the big three, see a big red button that says, please don't press the big red candy button. And Zatanna, with the stupidest face I've ever seen, says, well, and she presses the big button. And she says a spell that says protect us from harm, but when she presses the button, it activates a stasis field that freezes them all in place and unable to do anything. And nobody can get close enough to interact with it, and technically, it doesn't go against Zatanna's spells, so it can affect them. So at that point, local news comes up. Vicky Vale's like, what's going on here? And Sue's just like, what? You're not helping the situation. But at that point, we see coming out of the box and or taking advantage of the situation is the Secret Six, but not the Secret Six from any universe that you probably know about. This is from the Tangent universe, which is just a totally separate thing where it has like nothing to do with anything else. We got like Captain Atom, the Flash of that Earth is here. Couple other ones as well. That one of them looks like Harley Quinn, I should say. And yeah, immediately Sue's like, they're from an alternate Earth. They're using code names and they got a team thing. They're all in costumes. It's clearly an alternate Earth. So GCPD opens fire. They are blocked by Plastic Man from this Earth. Gypsy's just hiding out in the background. She's like, ooh, this is not good. I better stay hidden. Captain Atom, he's in there. He's saying, hey, these people's cops. Let's not cause too much damage. We see the Joker, aka Harley Quinn, comes in, Flash from this Earth, who is not so fast as much as has the ability to manipulate light in a way. We've got one that they call Spectre, who looks kind of just like Moon Knight / Ragman mixed together. Manhunter is also here, who just seems like someone with a gun. And as they're basically fighting against all the people who are shooting at them, aka GCPD, all of a sudden the ground starts moving underneath them. And they're like, hey, did you see that? And before they can really react to it, Manhunter says, hey, forget about the cops. Our targets are still alive. And then the ground starts lifting up underneath, and Captain Adam from this team is like, oh, they're more tenacious than expected. And Sue, God bless the artist, is giving the most, forgive my terminology, crack addict look here of like, yes, they survived, as we see the 4 that were in the gym come up from under the ground saying, well, the Justice League of America don't go down easy. So, yeah, all right. First thing, art. Some panels really work. Some pages really work because they do a lot of like big spreads here. I love the way the tangent heroes look. There's like 3 panels in this that are just not good. And that's not to say like they're horrible in terms of proportion or anything, but it's like the emotion that is supposed to be given off is not the emotion that I'm getting. Again, Sue in that last panel is a big panel with a lot of heavy detail, and she has the most manic look on her face. It may as well have been set during Identity Crisis. So yeah, it's a weird art style, but writing wise, I'm not quite sure what they're going for here. Like, I get the Secret Six may be like an underdog team of their own on their planet or something. It's got that vibe to it, but I don't feel like I've gotten enough of an attachment to the Justice League Detroit through this book. It kind of feels like I should be familiar with the team already, or I'm not supposed to care about the big 3 as much as I'm supposed to care about the smaller ones, which feels weird for a team dynamic, you know? So yeah, it's just a weird little book so far. I'm not saying it doesn't have promise, but I'm just not sure where it's going with it yet. I think I'm going to give this one a 6. It doesn't really feel like it gets above that for me, but it's at least got something going for it. It's a weird little one, which I guess fits in the term of Justice League Detroit. Convergence New Teen Titans #1, written by Marv Wolfman, art by Nicola Scott. Who better to write a Teen Titans book than Marv Wolfman? Probably no one. So we open up in Gotham City, where I guess the Teen Titans were just based at or were hanging out with for a while. We get Donna Troy basically celebrating the anniversary of being stuck under this dome by talking to a picture of her husband and saying, hey, a lot's been happening under here. The team's been staying active. We've been getting into a routine. People have started pairing off, like romantically, but you know, I'm still with you. So, yeah, she's basically saying, look, whatever happened to us, hopefully it didn't impact the rest of the earth. Hopefully you're still safe, and I'll be back to you soon. So we see Nightwing and Starfire using little jetpack kites to fly around the city, keeping an eye out for crime. Donna's behind the computer saying, yeah, there's 6 heat signatures up ahead. They killed some people down the block. Go ahead and take care of them. And Starfire's like, I'm gonna kill them. And Nightwing's like, please don't kill. That's not a good thing. And she's like, well, they killed first. So she starts firing off bullets at them from this kite thing. And then we cut across to the central city of Tangent Universe that's under a different dome. And I'm not even going to pretend half of these people, but we meet the Doom Patrol of that planet. And the most I can gather from their story is that they are from the future, and they have traveled to the past of Central City in order to prevent some catastrophe from happening in the future. But when they traveled back, that's when the dome came down. So at that point, they're trying to blast their way out of the dome, doing what they can. But ultimately, it's not doing anything. But then all of a sudden, the dome starts changing colors and lighting up. And that's where Telos comes over to both domes and says, hey, I'm lowering the domes. Please go fight each other. So at that point, Nightwing is like, all right, everybody meet up. This is going to be a whole big team meeting thing. And as the dome lowers, they see that they are on an alternate Earth, and that there's a distant city off in the distance. And we get the thing that everybody's powers start coming back because Starfire, she ditches the rocket kite and just starts blasting all of the criminals with her star blast. And Nightwing is still like, please, honey, don't do that, because they mentioned here these two got married. Being stuck under the dome, they were like, yeah, better, why not? Let's go ahead to get married. So they did that about 6 months ago, but it's been a little bit of fighting as to how lethal things should be. Starfire's leaning a little bit more towards burn them all to the ground. So she's going to continue to attack these guys, but she's like, there, I've taken them out, and don't worry, they're not dead, but you might regret that later because these criminals are scum. So at that point, Beast Boy is with Cyborg, who's down at Star Labs or something like that, and is helping mend the city's power grid. But it turns out that with the system being down, with the dome being up, something happened to the metals in his body where the promethium is all good. It's like regenerating him, but the other cells were not, and therefore it's caused this sort of breakdown of his whole system. So he's not doing hot. Meanwhile, back at Titans HQ, we get this one woman named Cole, who I had to do a little bit of research on just to understand this. Turns out she's a recent addition at this point, pre-crisis, where she can control some sort of crystals and generate them, and she is just hopping along after Jericho, just saying like, hey, why don't you love me? Come, I want you, please. And she's not getting anything out of him, and she's like, are you sure? Like, does he like women? And Donna doesn't say anything, just being like, look, just be yourself around him. It's the most you can really hope for here, okay? And maybe he'll come around. And she says like, oh, thanks, you help everybody else around here, you're the best. And Donna looks at the picture of the husband being like, I help everyone but myself. So at that point, the Doom Patrol over in the Tangent Universe sees the city of Gotham and just being like, well, I have a feeling that's our opponents. Should we like go over and attack? And they're just like, I don't know, it doesn't feel right. But then one of them gets a ding on a scanner saying, look, if we want to get back to our future and also our own Earth or whatever, we need a significant power source. And it turns out that power source is not available in Central City, but it is available over in that Gotham City. So we're going to have to go do that, because if we don't get home and change the future, billions will perish. So we then see Cyborg and Beast Boy are helping out building the power grid, and all of a sudden some ships start arriving, and they're like, do those belong to Star Labs? And they start shooting at them, being like, no, they do not. So seems the power source is somewhere in the power grid of Gotham City. Doom Patrol is now attacking them, and they introduce themselves as Doom Patrol, to which Beast Boy's like, wait a minute, hold on, I was with the Doom Patrol. You ain't the Doom Patrol. You don't look a damn thing like the Doom Patrol. So Starfire, Cole, all of them come in. They start joining the fight, doing what they can. We see pretty much the whole Teen Titans have gathered up, and they start fighting against the Tangent Universe's Boom Patrol until we get, I don't know his name. I think it's like a Rampage or something like that. He goes up against Cyborg, and Cyborg's like, I'm going to blast you with my sonic cannon. You're not going to like that. And she's like, haha, but you can't get through Star Sapphire's force field. And so the force field goes up, he blasts a sonic cannon, it causes Cyborg to blast against a wall nearby, and that's where Rampage realizes, oh crap, hey everybody, we gotta bail, we gotta figure out what's going on, just trust me. And so the Doom Patrol pack up, they fly out of the city. Starfire's about to go killing again, and he's just like, what, just hold on, just, they're leaving, let's just figure this out, okay? And she's like, oh god, why won't you trust me? And he's like, because you're going to kill them. So at that point, Donna and Nightwing confer, like, yeah, they're not really looking to kill us. So, like, they just wanted to, like, threaten us into leaving them alone. It didn't feel like they were coming on orders of the big voice in the sky. So, yeah, we got to figure out what's up. Also, Cyborg's over there dying in a corner. We need to tend to him. So everyone starts getting their way back over to the labs, and we see as the Doom Patrol's flying off, they're like, hey, look, I figured it out. We're both from different Earths, and the power cell, the thing that is what we were going for, was not in the power station. It was in that dude. He's got some energy cells inside of him. So the only way we're going to be able to generate our portal back to our Earth is by taking Cyborg apart and taking away his power cells. So we see the Teen Titans are waiting down in their Star Labs or whatever. Nightwing comes around the corner looking sad, and he's like, Starfire's trying to talk to him, and he's just like, oh, I forgot something, I need to talk to you later, okay, just not now. So he goes off. We see Starfire talking to Cole, and Cole's basically like, hey, you seem to be fighting with Nightwing a lot. And it's like, yeah, we just have different philosophies on fighting and whatnot. It's not a big deal. We'll work through it. And she's like, oh, believe me, I understand. And looks over at Jericho like, ah. So we see Nightwing getting up to talk to Donna, and they basically have the same talk of like, look, we got to figure out how to do something. And Donna's like, okay, but like, you got to deal with your personal life right now. Because if there's one thing about New Teen Titans, it's the soap opera melodrama. What are you going to do about your stuff with Starfire? And he's like, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to ignore it for right now because there's clearly bigger things going on. And she's like, yeah, I'm not letting you off the hook. You got to deal with this. And she's like, I know, we're different people. And I thought we could move past this, but like, maybe I made a mistake of marrying her. Maybe I shouldn't have done that under the dome. And Donna's like, you should be happy that you have someone who loves you and is with you under the dome. I don't have that. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking. So everyone's off doing their own thing at this point. Eventually, one of the members of the Doom Patrol named Firehawk separates out from the rest of the group as they're deciding to kill Cyborg. And Firehawk goes over to a tablet and makes a connection through the internet or whatever with Nightwing and says, hey, my name's Firehawk, we need to talk. So I'm not going to pretend like I have a major connection to the New Teen Titans. I really don't. But I do think this book does a good job of building that connection up. It makes it so there is a bit of intrigue here and a little bit of, okay, what exactly is happening? I think that the situation with Cyborg is not properly explained. They just kind of just hand wave it away. It's like, his body's breaking down because of we can't help him. So issues on that. Doom Patrol, that needed like a full page breakdown of just like, here's each of the members, here are their powers, and here's why you should care. And I didn't get any of that. So those are the negatives on that. As for the positive, I like the idea that they don't care about the fighting. They just want to get back home, and it just so happens that they have to fight in order to get these power cells. But then counterpoint to that, that last page showing that they're making this connection. They're talking to each other, and they're kind of setting up this idea of maybe we can reach a point where everyone can get what they want and no one has to die. I like that as a concept, and I'm curious to see how they're going to develop it. So it's got its hits, it's got its misses. I think I'm going to come down more on the side of vaguely hits. So I'm going to say 7. It's barely a 7, though. It just squeaks into it. But I do think this was a good issue, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we do wrap this up, hopefully without any casualties in the next issue. Convergence, The Flash, #1, written by Dan Abnett, art by Federico Dallocchio, something like that. So we open in pre-crisis Gotham, and we open with Barry Allen. His alarm's going off. He rolls over and says, hey, Iris, it's 6 a.m. Oh, wait, that's right. I'm in the dome alone. I did not get Iris with me. I'm so miserable. And so he looks out the window and he's like, all right, good morning, Gotham. Still under a dome? Yeah, got that feeling. And so he goes through the history. He says, yeah, something about the trial of Barry Allen happened. And then after that, I was reunited with Iris. We went to the 30th century together to raise our kids there happily ever after. However, I had to visit my friends every once in a while. I always dipped back in to maybe do like a charity race or whatever. And on the most recent charity appearance, I got stuck. I got domed. So yeah, I'm stuck here, and every other metahuman in Gotham lost their powers. So we all ran out of luck, and we see him lacing up his shoes. He's getting like all of his daily stuff done. He's doing some stretches. And he's like, I have no idea how we're going to get out of here. It seems impossible. But we fought big scale threats before. It's always been something we could do. We've always prevailed. I just don't like feeling so helpless. So he goes out on a run. And he's like, yeah, Gotham just seems so ordinary, but this is what you do with life when you're normal, I guess. And so there's a woman who starts jogging past him casually, and he's like, oh, good morning. And she's like, oh, hi. And he like tries to pick up the pace, and the woman just keeps going, and he just can't keep up. And he's just like, oh my God, I can't even believe it. I don't have access to the Speed Force, and I'm just being lapped by normal people. So as he's huffing and puffing, he gets a page from work, a woman named Josie, and saying like, hey, the talk screens came back if you want to come in. So he runs down to the Gotham City Central Station. He is, of course, using his forensics work as a job here. And as he gets in, he's like, yeah, I don't know what's going on in Central City. I hope my parents are okay. Maybe it was stolen as well. Maybe anything else. I just really don't know. But he goes into the GCPD. He goes back into the crime lab. And we meet a woman there named Josie Layton, who is his co-worker and is helping work on whatever this case is that just got some new information in. And she is absolutely gorgeous, drop dead, and super interested in Barry. And he recognizes this. He knows that Barry is, or that Josie is absolutely hitting on him. He's just like, oh yeah, hey, you want to maybe, I don't know, grab a coffee later? And Barry's like, I get it. And after a year, like, don't get me wrong, there's a temptation, but I am married to Iris, and that is the only thing that's getting me through this. I have to believe that I'm going to get out of here and have my happily forever after with her. So he's like, nah, I got a thing. I got to meet up with someone. I rain check. And he's like, all right, no problem. So we see that thing that he needs to go run to is he goes out for coffee, but this time he's sitting at a cafe, kind of just venting to Bruce Wayne. And he's just like, look, maybe it's time that we stop thinking about trying to get out. Maybe we just start making the best of the life we can here. Like, these are our lives. Like, shouldn't we live them to the fullest? And Bruce is like, you really think that, man? Because that sounds awfully defeatist of you. And he's like, no, not defeatist, just, I don't know, pragmatic. A 20-something girl outran me, Bruce. That's humiliating. I don't like that. And he's like, look, everyone's working on other different ways. We're all doing what we can. And Barry's like, do you know how many giant threats we faced together? And we've always managed to overcome that, but like, we don't have a clue what's going on here. And it's been a year. Like, what are we doing, Bruce? We've never been in this sort of situation. And he's like, yeah, no, this might be the greatest crisis we've ever come up against, but we can't just give up. And he's like, yeah, all right, I got to get back to work. I'll see you later. And Bruce, as he's leaving, is like, hey, Barry, maybe think of this more as a marathon than a sprint. So Barry hails a taxi, and the taxi's like, oh, yeah, there's something weird going on today. Everybody's just a little bit jittery. Something's happening. And he's like, yeah, I guess. And Barry's like, no, he's right. I feel it. I feel it too. Traffic's weird. Something's happening. I've only just noticed it. He gets another page. It's work. He goes over to a payphone to answer it, and it's just Josie saying like, oh, hey, something about the crime scene. And all of a sudden, as he's like, look, I got to go back to work. It's close by. He pays off the cab driver. But as he's walking to work, Telos comes over the intercom. Ding dong. Everybody fight each other. Dome's coming down. And Barry's like, oh my God, what happened to the sky? What's going on? They see all the like panels of the different Earths and all that. And everyone's looking up all confused. And as everybody starts to like hushed whispers and panicking to each other, Barry's just kind of like running through the crowd, and he's like running into people. He's like, oh, sorry, excuse me. And then he's realizing, wait a minute, we've got a chance. We can do this. We can escape now. The dome is down. And he starts running faster and faster until finally he's like, oh my God, my powers, it's back. And so he activates his flash ring, which he's worn the whole time. He gets his costume out of it, and he is like, and just like that, I'm the Flash again, the fastest man alive. And so he immediately puts into action, like, I know what I have to do. He gets up to the highest point he can, runs up to the top of a skyscraper, and gets a vantage point. He wants to see where they're at, and he sees full Telos planet desert with just a few cities in the distance, and he's like, okay, this isn't Earth, there's a few other cities, and Gotham is real quiet, so what the hell's going on? And then he hears a voice from behind, or he doesn't hear a voice first. At first he's just shouting up to the sky being like, hey, can I get some clarification on the rules? What do you mean by champion? What do you mean by battle? Who are you? And then from behind there's a voice that says, hello, I think I'm your opponent. I think we're supposed to engage in combat. And Flash is like, I don't want to fight. Also, who are you? And he's like, well, my domes have only been down for a minute. I'm just now returning to my optimum condition. But I think that I am Superman. And out comes the Superman of the Tangent universe, who doesn't look a goddamn thing like any Superman you've ever seen before. He's wearing like cloaks and robes and stuff like that, and immediately Flash is like, I'm sorry, you're the who? So prep for that fight. What are the powers of the Superman of the Tangent universe? Good question. So I like getting into Barry's head there. I like the fact of Barry being the optimist and like you just barely seeing those cracks of doubt coming in. Like he has this optimism where he's like talking to Iris as he prepares in the morning. He's lonely, but he believes that there is a way back home. And just as it comes to a head, like you just see him be like, it's getting to be too much. I need something. And he's almost rewarded for that. So I like that. In terms of the Tangent Superman, please give me a page. Give me anything to explain what the hell this guy's power set is, what his history is. Give me something to attach to, because otherwise he's just a dude. Yeah, beyond that, I like the characterization of Bruce. I like this Josie character that's brought up as well. Even if she doesn't really amount to anything, I appreciate the fact of she's not just like there as a temptress. She's there as a person who is also craving that sort of human connection that Barry is. And it's just not lining up right. I appreciate that from a writing perspective. So yeah, no, it's a solid issue all throughout. I think I'm going to say this one is I'll give it an 8. I think this one is one of the better ones. So see how the fight with Superman tunes out, whether or not that's actually a actual fight or if it's the sort of thing where it's like, well, maybe we can talk about this and find a way that we're all going to be able to live. But regardless, I'm at least intrigued in the continuing adventures of this Barry. And that's it. That's all the comics that were put out by DC Comics this April 22nd, 2015. And as I am recording this bit right here, right now, I just learned about like 10 minutes ago that the Pope died. I don't have thoughts on that. I'm not religious. I'm not Catholic. I'm not in line to be the Pope yet. But it does make me kind of question about opening the show with a born-again Christian joke. It kind of feels in bad taste. Ultimately, I don't care enough, but just know I at least thought about it. So yeah. Next week, what do we got? It is simultaneously just another Convergence month and also a big one at the same time, because this is where all the books that couldn't meet their deadlines went to meet. So we have, I'm just going to say Convergence stuff first. So we've got Convergence number 4, and then we have for normal tie-ins, we've got Action Comics, Detective Comics, Infinity Inc., Justice Society of America, World's Finest, Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, Crime Syndicate, Plastic Man and the Freedom Fighters, and Shazam. Now, theoretically, this is labeled in a trade of Infinite Earths, which kind of tells me that it's the rest. Like, Crime Syndicate is Earth 3, Plastic Man and the Freedom Fighters is Earth 10. I'm thinking that it's just the miscellaneous that didn't fit into the other things, but I guess we'll see when we get there next week. On top of that, on top of all those other books we have 3 issue number 40s. So we've got Batman number 40, the end of the Endgame storyline, Superman number 40, which is the end of Jeff Johns' run on Superman, and Justice League number 40, which is the beginning of Darkseid War. So it's a big week. Be aware of that. Also, not to bury the lead here, Multiversity number 2, which is the finale of all of Multiversity, is also coming out that week. So, DC, you gave me 3 weeks of 11 comics each, and I'm very grateful, but damn, did you have to smack me hard with this one. I guess we'll see how long it takes. But yeah, that's all coming out next week. Be sure to tune in for that. I really don't have anything else to add on to it. I think that that's more or less it. So if you have any comments that you would like to share on any of the comics I talked about this week, last week, any week at all, go ahead and hit me up in the comments down beneath this video. I read every single one of them, including the ones that tell me to put comics up on screen. I see you. I see you. And trust me, I would. But I am recording this about 12 hours before it goes up. I don't have the time nor the effort, nor the inclination to do more work. I'm lazy like that. I apologize, but if you want to see the comic, buy one. Or get DC Universe Infinite and listen along with me. I'm a great storyteller like that. Yeah. That's how I answered comments, apparently. All of that aside, if you have any comments that you would like to share, there's that. And we also have a Discord, a subreddit, and a Patreon. All the links to those are most likely in the description. I haven't actually checked if I've been doing that. I assume I have been. Mainly because I've been saying it for 190 episodes now, and it'd be real weird if I haven't been doing that the entire time. So that's going to do it for me. Like I said, thank you very much for tuning in, listening, watching, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week and give this show, I don't know, what's a positive thing I haven't said yet? Give this show one of those smiley face stickers you get from the doctor's office when you're like 5 years old. Those always made me feel good, and I want one again. That and the lollipop. So thank you very much once again. Be sure to tune in next week, and always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.